I speak now to Thomas Gift. He's Director of the Centre on US Politics at the University College London. He joins us live from Harrisburg in Pennsylvania. Really good of you to join us on Al Jazeera. So we have this new wrinkle with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. dropping out of the election race and endorsing Trump. Kamala Harris has been playing it down. Will it have much impact on the race?
Well, thanks so much for having me, Melina. It's great to be with you. You know, if you had asked me that question a few months ago, I would have said yes, but now I would say no. And the reason is that RFK Jr.'s numbers have really declined in the polls over the last several months. He was at around 14 to 15%. Now he's down to about 5 or 6%. So it's a much smaller fraction of the electorate. Of course, in some of these swing states, the margin of victory for either candidate could be very tiny. So it could matter a bit. But there's also some evidence that suggests that now that RFK Jr. is out of the race, that many of his supporters may not actually turn out to the polls. So, all in all, this is probably good news for Trump, but I think it's important not to overstate its effect.
Okay. We have Kamala Harris, of course, coasting off the energy created by replacing Biden on the ticket, and then, of course, the DNC. But how does she keep this momentum going and, more crucially, turn it into votes?
Yeah, that's a great question. This is really where things get real for Harris. Now that the DNC is over, I think Harris's honeymoon is over too. It's been more than a month since Biden bowed out of the race. In that time, Harris has done 0 sit-down interviews with journalists. She's done 0 press conferences. She's not spoken at length in any unscripted setting. So I think that that's really going to be key. They're coming out of this convention with a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of excitement. She electrified the crowd, the Democratic convention. But now it's time to get concrete about policies and to answer tough questions. If she can do that, particularly in the next week or two, set herself up for good momentum, then you have to say that she's the favorite heading into November.
So what do you think she needs to do? Does she need to have to sit down with the press, do a one-on-one interview, or do we just wait until that debate?
Well, I do think that she is going to have to do a sit-down interview, and her campaign has committed to doing so. The big question, though, is who that would be with, whether it's sort of a more friendly interviewer or one who's more critical. I also do think that it's important just to take questions in an open setting, such as a press conference, where she can be grilled by Fox News and other conservatives over her record as a senator, her record as the vice president of the United States, and address some of the concerns that might be on voters' minds about whether she is too liberal on certain issues, whether she's just kind of outside of the mainstream in terms of progressive opinions.
You're, of course, speaking to us from Pennsylvania, which is one of those battleground swing states which may make or break the final vote tally. How is she currently looking in those swing states like Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania?
Well, the poll numbers certainly look much better for Harris than the poll numbers looked for Biden before he dropped out. Whenever Joe Biden was deciding on whether or not to stay in the race, he was down in some swing states by 6-7 percentage points. That's outside of the margin of error. There's been a huge surge in the polls for Harris, but still it's more or less neck and neck. That's true in Pennsylvania. It's true in many of the other states that you just mentioned. So the momentum is definitely trending in the right direction. But again, I think my question is this just a honeymoon period where she's gotten a lot of positive press? Journalists have been talking about the fact that she would be the first female vice president, first female president. And so, yeah, it's close right now. I mean, that's all there is to say.
And how do you think the issue of Gaza is going to poll? I mean, how big an election issue is it to voters?
Well, the one thing that we know is that Americans, by and large, don't vote on foreign policy. That's really been true, and that's what the empirical evidence suggests. Dating back to, again, when Joe Biden was still the nominee, and there was a significant protest vote against him in the state of Michigan, for example. So this could matter on the margins, but at the Democratic National Convention, there was a lot of concern about whether the protesters were going to become a distraction, whether that was going to overshadow the entire event. Actually, that turned out not to be the case at all. And so, there is a certain fraction of voters certainly that care deeply about this issue, understandably, but I don't think that ultimately is going to tip the election. It's going to be more about domestic issues.
Do you think people see a difference between Kamala and President Biden when it comes to the Gaza issue? I mean, it was interesting at the convention. She talked about Palestinian people's right to self-determination, but then she also went on to support Israel.
Exactly. I mean, I think Harris, in large part, has been trying to avoid this issue because she views it as a political loser. She's basically in a catch-22 position where, if she comes out too significantly in favor of the Palestinian cause or the Israeli cause, that she's going to get criticism from some angle. A lot of people say that she does need to get more specific because it is difficult really to discern her policies versus those of Donald Trump. So this is something that she's going to have to answer for. She's evaded it to this point, but it's unavoidable. She's going to get asked about it.
OK, really good to get your perspective. Thomas Gift, Director of the Centre of US Politics at University College London. Thank you.
Thank you.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.